Hi guys. So the Luigi Mangione uh, case is getting very interesting. It seems that he now has legal counsel, a lawyer by the name of Tom Hickey, who's representing him down in Pennsylvania, where it seems that the New York prosecutors will be trying to have this young man extradited to New York to face second degree murder charges. It's also expected that Tom Hickey will object. Apparently, he has 14 days to file a habeas corpus motion to try to prevent his client from being taken to New York to face murder charges. But the experts are pretty much saying that it's not going to be successful ultimately, and that New York will be able to obtain jurisdiction over Luigi Mangione, bring him back to New York, and try him for the murder of the CEO of UnitedHealthcare, who was gunned down in New York last week, you guys, in case you have been under a rock. Now, what is next? So, for the defense, um, well, it's interesting. I mean, I don't know how I feel about this case. I know that he has a lot of support online. People are really, hero worshiping this young man. Apparently, he has a beef with, big corporation, CEO, rich people, insurance people, etc. He comes from a very wealthy family from Baltimore, apparently. They have very deep pockets. They own golf courses and a lot of real estate. And apparently, they are the ones who hired his attorney, Mr. Hickey, in fact, so he doesn't have to settle for a court appointed attorney. And so people are loving on this guy a lot. He's quite good looking, quite gorgeous, as noted in a previous video. But I don't know how I feel. I just wonder if he were in a different packaging, if he looked like a Sean Diddy Combs, if he had a last name like, I don't know, Al Khashoggi or something, Al Assad or something like that, would people have, with the same facts, don't change any facts. Everything is the same. You have this young man, he guns down a man in cold blood in the streets of New York. He has his reasons, and I'm not going to sit here and say that, there isn't a lot of injustice in society and more of it coming down the pike, of course. I mean, we even have people like Vivek Ramaswamy not only promising to squeeze the poor, but to enjoy hearing them squeal as he does it. So there is a lot of stuff that's going on in society that, a man like Luigi Mangione, I understand why people have reacted the way they have reacted to some extent. But I just wonder if everything were the same. He had a beef with the rich. He has a beef with CEOs, greed, poor people being squeezed and left to squeal, etc., etc. And his name was Al Khashoggi, Al Assad, or his name was Mohammed. Would people interpret the data in quite the same way as they're doing with him and being Luigi Mangione? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. If he looks like a Sean Diddy Combs, would the public be so sympathetic? I don't know. For me, I want to hear the evidence, and of course, it looks like there's a lot of circumstantial evidence, if not straight up forensic evidence, etc., to tie him to the crime. And so, in that case, it would be a question of what would be the defense. I would think you would have to go for an insanity defense. If I had to try this case, I would be looking at an insanity defense. I mean, he clearly has some issues going on, and it sounds that like there were some issues. He had gone dark for several months. He disappeared. His mother filed a missing persons report just 2 or 3 weeks before this occurred. When he was arrested and he was being taken to the courthouse, he was yelling at the press about the lived experience of Americans and so on in a way that people question his mental health. It's unclear whether he's been on any kind of medication, how has he become radicalized, etc. So, I think the way they're going to get this man off, and I think they will get him off, okay, because he's so admired and loved. I think the juries will, unless something comes out between now and his trial, to show that this really is not what everybody thinks it is. It's really premeditated. Because I think what I said in another video, and I'm kind of standing by it, but not as firm necessarily. But to me, this seems like a pre-planned murder where there's no way that this young man could have known exactly the timing of the CEO's exit from one hotel to the other hotel. No way he could have known which door this man was going to come out of if he's a total stranger who's never met this man before. There's some kind of prior knowledge here, in my opinion, in my view. Something here is not quite right. In the sense that this is not as random as it may seem. This was premeditated, which is why I'm so surprised that he was charged with second-degree murder. As I said, I think it's possible that that charge could be increased after the prosecutors have completed their investigation, which is what's going to be happening next. I mean, the question was what would be next? I mean, there'll be an investigation and evidence gathering. I mean, in addition to trying to stave off this extradition to New York, you're going to have an investigation. His attorney, Mr. Hickey, will conduct a thorough investigation because right now he's saying that he has zero evidence that his client did anything. So he needs to conduct an investigation. He has to focus on any inconsistencies in the prosecution's evidence, potential mitigating circumstances like the mental health of his client, and any procedural errors during Mr. Mangione's arrest or interrogation. So he has to look for that, trying for mistrial or whatever in the initial phases. Then again, as I said, he would have to do a mental health evaluation of his client. A psychiatric evaluation would, explore whether Mr. Mangione was mentally impaired at the time of the crime, which could lead to a diminished capacity on his part to understand the consequences of his actions. Although I do think under normal circumstances, that would be a bit of a stretch because it's clear from the digital footprint that he left behind that this man had done some planning. He had the fake IDs. He had checked into the hostel under a fake name. He had a fake driver's license. He had $8,000 of cash in his pocket in US currency, plus another 2,000 or so of an foreign currency on his person when he was apprehended in Pennsylvania, according to published reports. This is not a man who's completely crazy. This man is a thinking man. He's thinking, he's planning, he's plotting, he's executing in a very sort of logical way. Yes, he left all of these traces, and so he was very sloppy when he went to the Starbucks. He left the DNA. He was in the room in the hostel with the fake ID, and he left all his fingerprints. He even had his passport on him, which again would mitigate against him being a complete lunatic because, again, this shows planning, right? And that he had the capacity to understand exactly what it was he was doing. However, it is incumbent on his attorney at this point to request a psychiatric evaluation to see whether, he had diminished capacity and whether the insanity defense would work in this situation for his client, because frankly, I think that would be the best case scenario here. Get him the insanity defense, they put him in a mental institution for a few years, and then he is back out on the streets. Um, you know, I don't think, there are other things that, would normally be looked at this time, such as whether it was self-defense or some kind of provocation. If there's any evidence that Thompson provoked Mangione, I mean, did they know each other? Did they know each other prior? We don't really know. What if they were like, seeing each other or something? Anything is possible in this world. I mean, they might have known each other. Think about that. Could they have been having a relationship that went bad or something like that? Because he knew exactly where this man was going to be. For all we know, he was seen on the telephone talking to someone prior to the shooting. This could have been Thompson himself. We don't know that Mangione did not know Brian Thompson, you guys, right? So there's that. Was there some kind of provocation to reduce the charge from, say, premeditated or intentional murder to a manslaughter charge, for example? If you can't get the insanity defense, get a manslaughter, right? Or if possible, even self-defense. But I mean, I don't know how you're going to win a self-defense case here when you shoot someone in the back. It's kind of hard, right? The other thing they're going to be looking at is whether they can negotiate a plea bargain if needed, right? Um, because under normal circumstances, I would think that Mr. Mangione would be convicted of this murder under normal circumstances. Again, this case so far is not normal in the way that the public has reacted. And so maybe he will not even be convicted. But let's say it looks like he's going to be convicted after all of the investigation has been done. Mr. Hickey, his lawyer, if he's still a lawyer, because he could be removed, because some people are saying that he talks too much and he doesn't seem serious. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a good judge of what's a good lawyer. But Hickey may want to negotiate with the prosecutors for a reduced charge or sentence in exchange for a guilty plea, So that's one of the things that could be next. Obviously, if it goes to trial, you're looking at, jury selection. And given that Mr. Mangione has this cult following, Mr. Hickey would aim to select jurors who would be sympathetic to his vigilante status or skeptical of corporate executives and rich guys like Thompson. Again, that's not necessarily my position. I don't think that you don't go shoot people because they're rich. But there are people in the society who feel that corporate greed is a problem, that this rich poor dichotomy is also a problem, and they may be sympathetic to Mr. Mangione. And yeah, I mean, in a war of jail versus freedom, and your neck is on the line, you're going to go for people who are going to be sympathetic to your client, right? Could he walk free? Could this man walk free from these charges? I think yes. I think, for example, if evidence was obtained, for example, unlawfully, or if his rights were violated in some way, Mr. Hickey, his lawyer, could file motions to suppress critical evidence, and this potentially could lead to a dismissal of the case. It's kind of like the Puffy video. I mean, if the judge in the Diddy case suppresses that video, the prosecution's case is over pretty much, right? So is there anything here in Mangione that they could suppress? Time will tell. He could also walk with the jury, just letting him walk. Given Mr. Mangione's vigilante status and his charisma, his good looks, his abs, his smile, etc., a jury might sympathize with him, refusing to convict even if evidence supports the guilt. And in some cases, even if the jury, I don't know if in New York, I'm not a criminal law expert at all, but I know that there are situations where you could get a conviction from a jury and the judge could override that, and set someone free, or just sentence them to something ridiculous. Um, Now, of course, with murder and things like that, I think there's certain imposed minimum years, like maybe 15 years or something. I'm not really sure, but there are many ways that this guy could just walk away from this whole thing, including just being adjudicated insane. He gets into an insane asylum for a year. They give him some medication. He swallows it, he doesn't swallow it, whatever. But within a year, he's out back on the streets. That's possible too, right? It's also possible he could walk if there's just insufficient evidence that actually ties him to the actual crime. If the prosecution cannot definitively tie Mr. Mangione to the shooting, example, no witnesses or no weapon found, Hickey could argue reasonable doubt. Now, I know that when he was apprehended in Pennsylvania, they did find a gun on him. Whether or not that's the same gun, whether that's the murder weapon, I don't really know. But I think it might be at least similar, if not identical, right? And for all we know, this guy could just be a copycat because, the murderer in New York was widely diffused. His images were diffused worldwide. I mean, I'm in Paris, right? All over the world, we know exactly what this guy looks like, what he dresses like, etc., etc. And so anyone could start to imitate him, get a backpack like his, etc., etc. So we don't really know that this guy is the guy. How do we know that this guy is the guy? The backpack that they found him with in Penn. Yeah, the backpack was not the same backpack. I mean, there was a backpack that he was seen with on a bicycle heading uptown Manhattan, to, I guess, to a bus terminal or something like that. And I believe that a similar knapsack was found in Central Park. Now, when he was apprehended in Pennsylvania, this individual, he had a similar knapsack, but it was not the same one. So where is he getting all these knapsacks, So we have to sort of wait to hear what evidence they actually have on this, because it could turn out that they have insufficient evidence to actually tie Mr. Mangione to this murder in New York, right? This could just be a troubled young man who's just copycatting, right? That could really be all it is. Look, an acquittal in such a high profile case is highly unlikely, but a skilled attorney, like I hope Mr. Hickey for Mangione's sake, could leverage Mangione's public images and any weaknesses in the prosecution's case to negotiate a favorable outcome, or minimize the penalties, or basically just get his client total freedom. Anyway, listen, that's all for this one. See you in the next one. If you're not yet subscribed to the channel, definitely hit that subscribe button. It's just one click. It costs you nothing, and it helps the channel so much. Helps keep the lights on over here so that I can keep bringing you these videos every day. And I will definitely be staying on this case to keep you updated. Okay, thanks for listening. Hit the thumbs up, subscribe. Bye.